As the New York-born son of Eastern European Jews who barely survived the Holocaust, Lev Raphael grew up in a world haunted by secrets and ghosts. Having spent years fleeing from his parents' past, he decided to confront that past and in the process to come to grips with Germany, the company he blamed for the horrors visited on his parents and indirectly on himself. Mr. Raphael's parents met and were married at the Hillersleben displaced persons camp shortly after their liberation by the 30th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army. Lev's father, a prisoner at Bergen-Belsen, was liberated on the train near Magdeburg. His mother was a slave laborer at the largest ammunition factory in Germany. In his book, My Germany, Raphael sets out to trace what happened to his parents and their families during the war. It is a wholly enthralling, beautifully written story of healing and forgiveness, in which Raphael not only sheds his hatred and fear of Germany, but also comes to a deeper, richer understanding of his parents and Jewish heritage, and above all, of himself. Mr. Raphael, a prize-winning pioneer in American Jewish literature, has been publishing fiction and nonfiction about the second generation, the children of Holocaust survivors, since 1978. The author of 19 books that have been translated into nearly a dozen languages, he has been a radio talk show host, a newspaper columnist, and an academic. He's done hundreds of talks and readings from his work on 3 continents, and his writings is taught at colleges and universities across North America. Mr. Raphael can be found on the web at www.levraphael.com. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lev Raphael.
The cool thing about being homework is that somewhere in this country right now, someone is saying, damn, I have to read that Raphael. Your colors are green and white, and so were my university, so go Tigers. We were the Spartans, because I see it's game day, right? Well, first, I need to say thank you to the liberators, because without them, I would not be standing here. Thank you doesn't seem enough. I've been saying it to them every day, every opportunity I've had, but that's all I can say right now. Thank you from my heart to your hearts, because you made my life possible. To my fellow Jews here, I want to say, wish you a Happy New Year. Shana Tova Umetuka, a sweet and happy New Year. And to Matt Rozell, who has got to be one of the most amazing teachers in North America, if not the whole world. Live long and prosper. Matt believes that teaching history matters. He believes it fiercely, and we are all here today because of his belief. Now, a Holocaust survivor once said to me, I feel really sorry for you. And I said, for me? I wasn't through the Holocaust. How can you feel sorry for me? What's wrong with my life? And she said, because you have not had a normal childhood, but I did. And she was right. Like many children of Holocaust survivors, I grew up on a totally different planet than anyone else I knew and anyone else I've met. I had no relatives. I had no family photos. I had nothing tangible that came from the old country. There was nothing in our household that pre-existed my parents moving to America in 1950. So there was no sense of where we had come from and who we were. There were also no memories. You know, parents, and sometimes they're boring, but parents love to talk about the past and family and relatives. My parents could not speak a word about anyone in any way, because as soon as they remembered a wonderful birthday or a picnic or anything like that, they would start to cry, because almost their entire families were wiped out. And so I grew up in a very strange environment with a sense of not belonging anywhere. I grew up with a sense of loss and a sense that the worst could happen to you at any single moment, which is what happened to my parents. Anything could happen. Now, of course, that's kind of in New York too, but for me it was more of a sense of horror. I knew that the Nazis had grown up wanting to kill my family and had killed almost everyone except my parents. They had escaped purely by luck. They had escaped because these soldiers here approached the train and approached my mother's camp. And she just walked out one day because the Nazi guards got afraid and ran off. She took a risk. Now, this is a very hard set of lessons to grow up with when you're a kid. This is not an American story. It's not the Minutemen fighting off the British. It's not astronauts landing on the moon. It's not inventors and inventing the light bulb. It's not the sheriff taming the Wild West. It's not the heroism that we as Americans like to think about. And for a long time, when I was growing up, there were no conferences like this. There were no Holocaust education programs. There were no Holocaust museums. Americans did not want to talk about it, and most of what was available about the Holocaust then was in other languages than English. So it wasn't accessible the way it is now. What I grew up with basically is what the Jewish poet Melanie K. Kantrowitz says: I can't go home. I'm a Jew. Where I come from was burned off the map. So who did this? Who is responsible? Well, the answer was really simple when I was growing up. It was the Germans, or the Nazis. It was interchangeable. And in my family, we boycotted every single thing that came from Germany. We were not allowed to touch, have, hold, look at anything from Germany. When my parents were shopping, they would take something off a shelf and turn it around, not to see what the price tag was, but to see if it had been made in the Federal Republic of Germany, and if it had, it was put back on the shelf. So, and this extended to everything. Phonograph records. We couldn't even wear, when it got hip, when I was in junior high, we couldn't wear leather jackets because the Gestapo wore leather. And that made my parents upset. They never explained to me, though, why you were allowed to sit on a leather chair. That part didn't quite fit. But these things don't always add up. And so I grew up thinking of Europe, but thinking of Europe as a very dangerous place because Germany was at the center of it, and Germany was waiting to get me. So that even when I was an adult and I traveled in Europe, I refused to take a train through Germany. I'd go around if I could. And I didn't want to fly over Germany because my worst nightmare was, what if the plane crashes? And what if I'm stuck in a hospital surrounded by them? Then something remarkable happened in my life, and everything changed in the early years of this decade. My mother died. I did some research on a genealogy website, and I found a distant cousin, so distant she's not Jewish, of hers living in Magdeburg. This totally freaked me out. I'd heard the word Magdeburg my entire life. Magdeburg, the train at Forest Lake. I'd heard these things, and yet they weren't real. And suddenly I thought, I who had feared Germany my entire life, decided I had to go to Magdeburg. I had to see the train at Forest-Leben, or the tracks at Forest-Leben that you see out on the wall. I had to see where my mother's camp was. I had to experience it. It was totally mind-blowing for me. Nothing at all like what I expected. Well, we know Germans are very organized, right? And sometimes this can be good. And in the case of annihilation, it was very bad because they were very efficient at killing people. But my distant cousin helped me with my research amazingly. She set up my entire time there. At 9 o'clock, you will go to this archive. At 10:30, you will be picked up for coffee, and they will take you here. At 11:15, this will happen. She set up everything for me, and I was able to find amazing materials. What was most striking to me in Germany was something I never expected. The black writer James Baldwin said that what was wonderful and curious to him when he went to Paris in the 1950s was he didn't feel black because being black didn't matter to people in France. He felt American. That was the basic difference. And what I experienced in Germany was being American. Everything that was different in that country registered with me in a totally different way. And so my book, My Germany, is history, it's memoir, it's detective work, it's a mystery, and it charts for my whole lifetime of fear and then letting go of that fear of Germany, what Germany has meant to me and my family through my life. I've been publishing fiction and nonfiction for over 3 decades, which is kind of amazing to add up. And I've always been a storyteller. I wanted to be a storyteller from 2nd grade on. But now I have, to my surprise, a brand new story to tell. And this story is very American when you think about it, because there can't be anything more American. Holocaust survivors survived the absolute worst that can happen, are rescued by American soldiers. They come to America, the freest, most wonderful country in the world. They raise a son who has everything open to him, nothing is barred to him. He becomes a successful writer. He goes back to Germany, the country that he hated, and he is a success there and has his books translated into German, and he has Germans applauding him and thanking him for what he's saying. So I feel like with this book, My Germany, and it's my 19th, I've moved into a new future. I have German friends now, which is amazing. I write a German email to somebody almost every day, even though my grammar is kind of shaky. There's 16 ways to say the word "the" in German. Think about it. It's pretty scary. I speak at German cultural centers. I speak to German conversation groups. I am a good friend with somebody who was in the firebombing of Dresden as a child, an 8-year-old girl, and half of her face is still paralyzed because of that. I take German classes. I watch German movies and love them. I drink German coffee. And that may not sound like a lot, but in my family, you couldn't even have a coffee bean grinder that was made in Germany. You could have nothing. I talk to people in America and Canada and now in Germany about my progress, about the changes in my life, where I've come from, and I talk about not forgiveness, which people want to know about. I talk about reconciliation, because I think that word is very different. What reconciliation does is acknowledge the enormous gap between Jews and non-Jews, Germans and Jews, and acknowledges the rupture of the Holocaust. And it doesn't say that rupture can be bridged, but you can be healed, but can be closed, but you can build bridges across that. You can build new connections and a new consciousness. What's driven me from the very beginning of my writing career and still drives me now is a concept that's very deep and very connected to Judaism. It comes from our mystical tradition, and it's called Tikkun Olam. It means healing the world, because it acknowledges that the world needs healing. The world is ill. It needs to be brought together. And maybe it's never been so much in need of healing since the Holocaust. All of you in this room have the power to heal the world, like the soldiers, like the survivors who grew up and had their own lives and had their own children, like me, who's doing it through my writing. You all have the power of Tikkun Olam. You can heal the world with what you do, if you use it. Thank you.